Good evening. We appreciate all of you being here. And welcome to the May 1st, 2018 Ogden City Council meeting. Let me turn my mic on. How's that? Is that any better? Better. Do you want me to start over again? This is the May 1st, 2018 Ogden City Council meeting. Let the roll call reflect that all council members are present. We'll turn the time now to Vice Chair Nadolski for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. You'll please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you would kindly join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is a recognition. This is for Charles A. White, and we've asked Councilmember Lopez if he would make that presentation.
Yes, Chair Heyer, I appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation. It's really an honor to do this. I was very excited when they selected me yesterday to do this, so thank you. This is a joint proclamation of the Ogden City Council and Mayor proclaiming May 1st, 2018 as Charles Chuck White Day in Ogden City. Whereas Charles A. Chuck White was appointed to the 12th as the 12th president of Weber State University in 2013, bringing with him nearly 30 years of experience in higher education. Throughout his tenure, President White provided outstanding leadership for the university, implementing a heightened focus on accessibility for students, improving the quality and functionality of educational facilities, and involving and engaging the Ogden community. And whereas President White earned a Bachelor's of Science in Chemistry from the University of Virginia in 1977, and a doctoral degree in chemistry from the California Institute of Technology in 1982, this background allowed Chuck to make learning even more exciting through incorporating science experiments and presentations to students and the general public. And whereas prior to his work for Weber State University, Chuck gained extensive experience in higher education. He fulfilled several roles at the University of Utah, including Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies, Assistant Vice President of Continuing Education, and was the Dean of the Graduate School, Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies, and Assistant Vice President of Continuing Education. And whereas throughout Chuck's tenure as Weber State University President, the university saw growth in enrollment and facilities with a school record 27,949 students enrolled in the fall of 2017, with the largest graduating class of 5,772 this academic year, and the completion of several construction projects on campus, with several currently under construction. And whereas under his leadership, programs were created to make educational opportunities more accessible and better the lives of its students, faculty, and the community, the Dreamweaver program offers free tuition for local low-income residents. Part of the Dream 125 campaign, a fundraising effort to celebrate the university's 125th anniversary, includes funds that provide competitive salaries to attract high-caliber professors to Weber State University. And whereas President White was also a driving force to strengthen the relationship and partnership between Weber State University and Ogden City, the College Town Coalition was developed and received national recognition when it was honored with the distinguished Larry Abernathy Award by the International Town and Gown Association in June 2015. And whereas while at the helm of Weber State University, Chuck displayed humility integrity, valor, and dedication. His remarkable leadership has allowed and expanded the experience of quality educational opportunities for students, faculty, and staff within our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell hereby proclaim May 1st, 2018 as Charles A. Chuck White Day in Ogden City. We proudly recognize Chuck for his unmatched contributions to our community and present him with a key to the city of Ogden. We wish him well in his future endeavor as president of Salisbury University in Maryland. Congratulations, President Chuck White. And with that, I make a motion. With that, Chair Heyer, I make a motion that we approve this joint resolution.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lopez, seconded by Vice Chair Nadolski. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? It passes unanimously. Now we can start the poll.
Come over and receive these, and let's have anyone that came here to support you that would like to come over and take a picture also, please.
I miss you more than that. Well, okay, come on up. Come get a picture. Let's get centered around. He's confident, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
I mean, there's plenty of space on that thing, I'm sure.
Brittany took 100.
I know, it's like,
And also just to finish the proclamation I just read, I really want to thank you, Chair Heyer and Vice Chair Nadolski, for allowing me to present this. I'm very, very honored and grateful to you for that. Thank you very much.
We thought of you first.
Thank you.
No brainer.
Thank you.
Would love to hear from you. Let's see. Do you know? I think the mayor has a little some part of this.
Mayor.
We might need to take another picture, won't we?
But I'll put this on record. We have not given many of these out in the 6 years that I've been in this position. And it's been a real honor for me to work with you to open new channels of communication. I think as is what recognized in Luis's proclamation, the National Town and Gown Association have recognized what's gone on here. We had a little party last Friday, and I talked about different difficult things that we've dealt with throughout the course of the last 6 years. And Chuck would come to me and say, how do I communicate this to my kids? My 28,000 kids. I've got 2 that I have a hard time communicating with. I can't imagine the levity and the gravity of communicating that with 28,000 kids. But I've been absolutely impressed. I admire you. I appreciate what you've done. You've really done phenomenal things with Weber State. We can talk about all kinds of different accomplishments we've seen up there. But this presentation of a key to Ogden City, Utah, is from all of us just because of your authenticity and what you've added to this community. It's been an honor and a pleasure of mine to work with you. We're going to miss you tremendously. I want to wish you the best of luck in Victoria for everything that you're going to do on your new adventure. But just know, when you leave, know that we love and appreciate everything that you've done, and that's been very recognized, and we feel a big loss in your absence. So thank you very much, and it's my honor to present you the key of the city.
Well, I am deeply honored. deeply honored. Thank you, Councilman Lopez. You have been a large part of what has been successful at Weber State over the years that I've been here. When I was first appointed at the end of October 2012, just about the first thing I did was to come up in November and meet with Mark and Mayor Caldwell. And we talked about what was needed in Ogden and the partnership that we wanted to build between the city and the university. And then we basically just went out and did it, didn't we? You remember we had this discussion where we both promised never to utter the word gondola in public. He doesn't remember this, but I do. And that really set the tone for the work that we have done together over the years, the partnership that we have enjoyed over the years. And the proclamation said a lot of really nice things about good things that have happened at Weber State, but it hasn't been me. No one person could do all of those things. It's been a partnership with the city, and it's been the work of a team, many of whom are here in the room today. So thank you very much. Victoria and I are off to a new adventure, a new university, a different place with different challenges. We have really enjoyed our stay here, and we'll be back to visit. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It has been an honor to have you here. It's been a lot of fun. I got to participate in the Abernathy Award, going back to D.C. for that. That was a lot of fun. Shane was there, and that was pretty good times. That was great. Thank you, President White. Okay. I almost think we need a picture with the key to the city, though, in the picture, don't you think?
Yeah.
Let's do that again. Let's bring those same people back up. Bring them both and all the peeps.
Yeah. We only took 2 of the last ones. Who's got room?
You know, that film is cheap, Brandon.
It's not on a quota. Make sure you're all in the same places.
This way now.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
this side got taller.
Yeah, there you go.
Two of the tallest people in
Gonna
front.
come over here, yeah.
Want to trade you?
Something to be asked.
Yeah.
So you guys feel better about it. All right.
It's just electronic.
Next one, get in the box.
Yeah.
Well, the rest of the agenda is riveting. You're welcome to stay. But we understand if you'd like to leave, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item on our agenda is approval of minutes. The first minutes are the special meeting of January 2nd, 2018. Councilmember White.
Yes, Chair Heyer, I've reviewed those and they look to be fine.
Then regular meeting of January 2nd, 2018. Councilmember Blair.
Yes, thank you, Chair Heyer. I have reviewed those and found them to be accurate.
And the regular meeting of February 27th, 2018. Councilmember Lopez.
Yes, Chair Heyer, I reviewed the minutes, found them to be accurate, and I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lopez, seconded by Councilmember Blair to approve the minutes. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Do you want to do that now? Okay.
Before we move to the next agenda item, I want to make a motion that we amend the agenda, move item 9, new business, ahead of item number 8, report from administration.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to amend the agenda, switching 8 and 9. Vice Chair Nadolski made the motion, seconded by Councilmember Lopez. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next item is public hearing. Annual action plan for July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019.
Ward Ogden is here to present, Chair.
And Ward Ogden.
Chair and members of the council, the annual action plan is our application for federal funds for housing and community development. We do this each year. The application requires that we use actual estimates, or excuse me, actual grant amounts that are derived from the federal budget. There were delays in adopting the federal budget, as we all know, and so we didn't get our numbers. We operated on estimates based on what we had last year. So that's what we published, and that's what everyone has seen so far. And the federal budget was delayed substantially, and it was just this afternoon that we actually got our actual grant numbers. And so we heard that we received a $191,000 increase over last year. So that's good news. What we'd like to do is recommend that rather than operate on an estimated action plan, that we continue the hearing so that we can put together a final action plan based on the real numbers, and use your procedures for continuing the hearing, however that works best for you. And we'll come back with the final. The numbers are easy, and we'll have that ready in the next day or so.
Okay,
That would be my recommendation.
any questions for Mr. Ogden? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, there was an email sent to all of us.
I think I can make that motion, Chair Hine.
Okay, yes.
It's
go
right
ahead.
here in front of me.
Sure.
I make a motion to continue the public hearing to May 15th to have the updated entitlement numbers reflected in the annual action plan.
Chair Heyer,
Yes.
I wonder if it might be appropriate to check and see if there's anyone here that wants to speak to it before.
That would be a good idea. And we actually have some people, so this is good.
Mr. Chair, this is a public hearing, so if you want to open the public hearing and then continue the public hearing, that's
what we'll do,
how
yeah.
we had recommended it. Yeah.
So since this is a public hearing, is there anyone in the audience that is here to speak to this annual action plan? Now would be the time. And we will continue this, so
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
we want to continue this public hearing for 2 weeks. So we won't need to close this public hearing. Uh-huh.
I knew that.
Chair Heyer,
Yes, sir.
has this public hearing been continued with?
So we still need a second and a.
Yeah, I will second if her motion
Okay,
is okay.
so we have a motion by Councilmember Traburka, seconded by
I will second that.
Councilmember Blair, to continue the public hearing to May 15th. That is the date, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is just a roll call vote. I mean, this is just a voice vote, right, to continue the hearing? So this is a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Yeah, are there any opposed? Okay.
Jeez, when we go off script, it's that.
Yeah, I guess kind of, yeah, the wheels came off of that one, didn't they?
It's right there.
It was a trap.
It was all right. Okay, the next item is reports from the Planning Commission concerning the Lincoln Place Development Agreement amendments.
Greg Montgomery will be presenting. I want to point out that was the shortest Ward Ogden's ever been at the podium.
Welcome, Greg.
So are you setting the standard? Is that what?
Yes. I'm just kidding.
Okay. Mr. Chair and members of the council, this is a recommendation to you based on a petition that was filed to amend the development agreement for the property at 253 12th Street. You may recall, if you've been with the council for any time, that we have had different amendments to this piece of these properties that go from Lincoln to Grant on the south side of 12th Street. This proposal specifically deals with that solid red-lined area, about 1.4 acres. And the request is to amend the development agreement to allow a total of 5 buildings to add another building. So this site would have 2 buildings on it, The original development agreement had 4 total. This would make a total of 5 buildings. Also, to amend the agreement, because of the 2 buildings proposed on the site, to allow 5 monument signs and increase the total square footage allowed for those monument signs to 375 square feet. I need to point out this is only for the monument signs. Each building can have its own signage in addition to what's in the development agreement, but this is strictly the freestanding signs that would be along 12th Street. So here's the proposed site plan, but there's here's the existing site plan with the 4 buildings. 3 are fast food restaurants, 1's a retail space. 2 options were proposed in the petition. One would be to have the 2 buildings, and in those buildings, one option would be to have a retail space and a sit-down restaurant. The other option would be to have both buildings be retail spaces. So both considerations are what are being asked to give some flexibility to what the tenants could be on this development. Also, with the new building out front, there was an additional building elevation for the tenant that would be located along the 12th Street frontage, and so that new building elevation is also included in the development agreement. And I should point out that what the Planning Commission had reviewed was a different building elevation. This has been revised since the Planning Commission's recommendation to match more what the Commission had recommended it look like in terms of changing the colors of the building. The building that the Commission looked at was all gray. This now goes into the browns and the stone that's in the development agreement already. So over time, when we first did this development agreement in 2008, this was the original site plan of the 2 restaurants, a sit-down restaurant, and then a commercial space. And as market forces have changed, so has the proposals for what would take place on the property. Originally, we started out at 31,400 square feet to today's proposal, where under either option, you'd be between 17,600 and 24,000 square feet for all the buildings on the project. And these are trends based on what has occurred since 2008. One of the concerns the staff had and discussed with the Planning Commission was the fact that with the new design, in either option, there's a lot of additional parking being proposed. On the one site where we have the 2 restaurants, 36 additional stalls are being proposed over the minimum requirement. On the retail side, 35 additional parking stalls are being proposed over the minimum requirement, where all the other tenants had built to the minimum requirement. So this has a lot of additional parking being proposed in this section that the others don't have. Staff had recommended, as we went to the Planning Commission, to look at some revisions of orienting the parking differently, having the street front orientation, and looking at minimum parking by ordinance be the maximum parking for the development. We would like to revise our recommendation after we had our work session and points were brought out. We feel that these comments that we had made as a staff really don't fit the overall character of what had been proposed earlier, of the questions that we talked about in the work session. So we're really, as a staff, are recommending not to consider staff's original recommendation, but look more at the Planning Commission's and the developer's proposal because of the items that came up at the work session. So in our recommendation, taking what the Planning Commission talked about, their key concern was the excess parking. This drawing illustrates, again, from the discussions that took place at the work session, taking a look at the additional parking and what could be done to get it down to the minimums which the Planning Commission recommended, but also put it in such a way that it makes sense and is logical and creates solid landscaped areas rather than bits and pieces. It also protects the neighbors that are to the east and to the south. So this, in either drawing, the dark green is what staff Planning Commission recommended should be eliminated to meet the requirement. The light green is what they had proposed already in the developer's plan. We feel that these options, again, as the Planning Commission recommended, get the parking into a more reasonable balance, meet the needs of what the developer had in terms of the front building and their needs, but also adds protection. It decreases the amount of asphalt, so it decreases runoff, and it also helps increase, decreases the heat island and increases the buffering to the neighbors, which we think are important considerations. So this is one of the items the Planning Commission has recommended, is that the parking be based on what is required, but not have additional parking.
So is it well to say that they want the minimum to be the maximum?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other consideration that the Planning Commission is recommending to you and was petitioned was to increase the number of monument signs. The present development agreement talks about 4 allowed. The Planning Commission has recommended to continue the 4, but allow the a new lot to be a multi-tenant sign, and that can happen by then increasing the total square footage of those shared signs. And that would be the recommendation of the Planning Commission, is that 4 signs still be the condition, but the monument sign in front of the new building could have a larger square footage to allow 2 tenants to be on that monument sign, both the front and the back sign, both the front and the back building. One other recommendation that came from the Planning Commission, besides allowing the 5 buildings, the colors, the parking, was to look at an option. Now, this wasn't included in the petitioner's request, but as the Commission discussed the challenges that have been faced over time, is to look at that back area to allow it also to have an option of multiple family dwellings, whether that be above a commercial or office space, or whether it be a standalone project. Again, it's kind of recessed back off the lot. Residential is on 3 sides of the properties. And this would still allow another option for marketing. So the Planning Commission added this to their recommendation. So in a 7-0 vote regarding this petition, the Planning Commission is recommending approval of the amendment with the following changes: that they accept the 2 site plans that are proposed with either option of retail, or retail restaurant, but subject to the parking being no more than that which is required in the ordinance. Now, one thing I should make mention here is because the development agreement in front of you was more site plan based, we would recommend that this wording actually be put into the text if you feel that that is the way you want to go, to have the language that the parking, the minimum parking be the maximum for that property. Revise the signage to be the maximum 375 square feet, but it's for still 4 signs. Amending the building elevations, which they have done, to the brown tones, that 5 buildings be added to the development agreement instead of 4, and add language that the back parcel could also have a multiple family option, either freestanding or above the office building. So that is the recommendations before you tonight.
Are there any questions for Mr. Montgomery regarding this?
I have one. We talked also in the work session about shared parking. Mm-hmm. Does that apply to either the commission or proposal?
That's in place with the overall original agreement. So that's not being changed. That still exists.
So that would apply both to the commission proposal and to the developer.
Yeah, there's no proposal to make that amendment to that part of the agreement. So that would still stay in the agreement.
They'll still have shared parking.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So I missed that. Do we have a map currently in the development agreement? But you would.
Right. The current.
So is it?
See.
Oh, that's in.
That on the left is the current map in the development agreement.
Agreement. Thank you.
This would be replaced with these other maps.
If you take the 2 proposals, one by the commission and also by the developer, what's the difference in size of parking in both of them?
So it is a reduction in the commission's recommendation of 35 or 36 parking stalls, depending on which design.
Be less parking with the commission.
Correct.
Can you remind us what's the primary reason for that again, for recommending less parking?
Again, the reason, two reasons. One was to, again, try to better integrate this to what the original concept was in terms of softening the site and providing the buffering to the neighbors who are both to the residential properties that are to the east and to the south. And also then to just reduce the amount of asphalt, for that's runoff considerations, for stormwater, what you have to detain. It also has a cooling effect on the overall site. The more hard surface, the hotter the site gets.
All right, thank you. Perhaps we could have the developer, if he chooses to come forward. Welcome. Glad to have you with us.
My name is Brandon Whalen. I am with Hawkins Companies, 855 West Broad Street, Suite 300, located in Boise, Idaho. Mayor Caldwell, Chair Heyer, thank you for this opportunity to make this application before you today. We do have a tenant that would like to be located on this property. That is Verizon Wireless. There we go. This is the site plan, the most current one for your consideration. It does differ from the one that was in the packet that was sent out earlier. I don't know how best to illustrate this to you.
That laser thing doesn't work on a screen like that.
So if you look, you can see a stormwater retention pond. As Mr. Montgomery was stating earlier, you have to retain your stormwater on site. And so we've moved the trash receptacle. We have a stormwater retention facility there that will also actually double as landscaping as well. So that's the only change that you'll see from the previous site plan from what we're proposing now. This site does have, I believe, 26 parking spaces. There are 14 to the east of the building, and then the rest are located behind the building. We tried to hide the parking spaces as much as we could. This is the site plan that Mr. Montgomery showed earlier, and you can see there is a bank of 70 parking spaces for that one retail structure. And so we're proposing to break that one retail structure up into two, and where you see a sea of parking right now, we're proposing a building to be located within that property. So that's how our site would look currently with the tenant that we have in place. You can see the landscaping up along 12th Street. You can also see the landscaping to the west side of the building. The end of row parkers, both the floating row and the row that's tied to the building, the end of rows, there's landscaping there as well. And again, as stated earlier, we've moved as many parking spaces to the rear and to the back of the building as possible. What you see in red, we have a very vigorous leasing team. It states on there that we will build to suit for a tenant there, or we would entertain a ground lease. We would entertain, this is an infill development, and infill developments typically come with challenges, and I think that we have to appeal to our senses to try to make something work. And I'll be quite honest with you, Verizon loves this site and they want to invest in the Ogden market, but they need a site plan that they feel they can operationally succeed in. And they also don't want to displace their customers on our neighbor's parking field. We feel that 10 parking spaces is a minimum. And again, this is an infill opportunity. This is an opportunity to get a 3,000 square foot tenant in there today, but they won't move forward with 10 parking spaces because they have between 4 and 5 employees, so that would have free up 5 or 6 parking spaces. And so the last thing that we want to do is displace our customers on our neighbor's parking field, the ones that they paid for, the ones that they maintain, the one that they sweep, the ones that they shovel the snow off in the winter. So before you today is a site that Verizon would willingly move forward on. And as stated earlier, down where the drainage swale is, there was parking there. So we've reduced some of the parking there and just allocated it in different spaces and tried to hide it as much as possible. These are the building elevations that we're proposing. As Mr. Montgomery stated, these have been revised from the Planning Commission's hearing. And this actually doesn't apply anymore. As Mr. Montgomery stated, the planning staff no longer feels that this site plan is the best way to move forward. So with that, I would just, we agree with all of the facts and findings of the Planning Commission's recommendation, except for the restriction that the minimum parking be the maximum allowed. If I could go back, and I don't know how to do that.
It's a test.
I think it's very interesting to point out in this parking plan right here, that building, I think, is 11,000 or 14,700 square feet. There are 70 parking spaces. So it comes up to roughly one parking space for every 200 square feet of retail space. And that is almost exactly what our site plan that has been submitted shows. Is we were at 73.5 if we were to park at that 1 per 200 square feet. So it's moving the parking around. We're not adding more parking that was shown on the site plan that's currently in place. And I would ask that instead of having that minimum be the maximum, you've increased the landscaping buffer to the neighboring residential properties. That in and of itself will reduce the size of our property. Therefore, having the ability to park it will be a little bit more difficult. We have less of our space available for that use in and of itself. And so I think that if we just struck that reduction in parking to the minimum being the maximum, we will have a better chance at getting somebody in there in that last spot to fill out this infill development. So it would require collaboration between us and the city. Hawkins Companies is a commercial development firm. One of the things that I will show, these are the tenants that we've worked with nationwide. We will find somebody, hopefully not currently in the Ogden market, that can come and be a benefiting member of this neighborhood, in this general shopping center, and the city of Ogden at large. We have a good relationship with all of those retailers, and we will work very hard to fill this infill development site out as best as possible. With that, I would stand for any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Whalen?
Have you shared your new plan with the planning department?
I did share it with Mr. Symes earlier today. I was planning on sharing it in the PowerPoint presentation today.
I have a question with regard to the area that you had in red that's not proposed for development at this point, but that you're working on. That's the space. In our work session last week, we talked about having a mixed use project there that would have a residential component perhaps to that. It seems like that would be well suited to shared parking. Would you have any issues with using some of that parking closer to the Verizon location and then perhaps making that work in the next stage?
It's awesome when you can find those two uses that have their intensities at different times during the day, so they can complement each other instead of conflict with each other. Hawkins Companies has recently entered into the multifamily housing market. We did look at a mixed-use development where we had 323 apartment complexes and about 27,000 square feet of retail development, and we tried to actually stack them so it would be residential over business. We couldn't make that one exactly work, but we're open to that. And that's that collaboration, that's that we're talking about in finding opportunities to work together. Bringing that up and exploring the opportunities for multifamily housing to be co-located on top of other retail uses, that's something that we would absolutely explore. I can't make any guarantees, but I think the highest and best use, that could be the highest and best use of that property.
It almost seems like we're going to have another application to amend the development agreement whenever you find whoever you want to put there. And so I just kind of bring that up as something that could be discussed.
Sure. And like I said, the complexities, we like to retain anything that we develop and keep it in our portfolio. But that is not always the case. And that was something that was kind of a hang-up, that if we sold a portion of the commercial development that had a residential use on top of it, who would manage that? Would it still be associated with the apartment complex, or is it by it in of itself? So that was something that we hadn't thought of that complexes the issue a touch.
You could probably talk to somebody in the city that we got some creative people here that could probably help. But is there any more questions for Mr. Whalen?
I do have a question. Are you going? Oh, sorry. So you were saying before, and I really appreciate how you've added that landscape element at the back of the lot. But you were saying before, because something's been proposed here, or is, if we pass this, like the Planning Commission's recommendation, that then we're saying there's certain landscape elements that are required. But I don't see that language anywhere really, right? So it's not actually in the document that we would add that landscaping. It's just a recommendation around removing the excess parking. Does that make sense, what I'm asking? So was your understanding that if we passed the Planning Commission's recommendation, that the landscaping that they recommended in those areas behind on the back lot would be a requirement?
I was under the impression that that was something that staff had added that they would like to see. It was not a condition of approval from the Planning Commission, but that was an olive branch in collaboration. I think that adding to that landscape buffer between retail uses and, you know, the garbage trucks and the delivery trucks, anything that we can do to buffer that from existing residential uses, I think would be a prudent thing to do. So that would be an added condition that we would not object to in this instance.
And I'm just trying to understand it myself.
How many parking stalls were in this?
There are, I believe, 26 in this configuration.
Okay.
I would
You're
like...
counting, I think it's 24 now that, I think your math is right.
But I'm having enough
And
tonight,
so the Planning Commission's recommendation was 9? Is that
10?
10? What? I'm just trying to compare. I'm just trying to get.
So what I had mentioned to you this evening was the Planning Commission's was that there'd be no more parking than the entire use. That'd be up to them to distribute who gets what among the two buildings, because again, they're shared.
Right,
So in
okay.
the concept we gave, the Verizon had 18 stalls around it.
Oh, okay.
And the retail space or the restaurant
So
space.
you were trying to do that shared parking deal
Correct.
that we were
Yeah.
talking about. Okay,
But if the Verizon site was just developed as we had shown in that drawing, there'd be 18 stalls for the Verizon. And I guess from what I'm understanding, you're increasing the parking in front of the Verizon from what you proposed originally. You've gone from 22 to 24 now? Correct. Okay.
Okay.
While Greg's there, why don't you give us your opinion of the proposal that he's made?
Actually, I can't see it, so I don't know what, I just see the blur, and my glasses are just reading glasses, so.
There you go.
This was parking, so we made that swale, the trash compactor over here from here to here, and that's where we created the 2 extra parking spaces.
Yeah. The one concern that I do see is if you're trying to share parking, and I don't know how I can go back to the other PowerPoint, but in trying to share parking, you want to get the parking by the doors of the building. So what they've done is taking what could be additional parking to the front side of the retail space, and now put that all as landscaping. So so more of the parking isn't by the front door anymore for the next space. It's more behind or to the side. So they've made that potential area to get to both sides of the retail space. They've taken one and said, okay, you're not going to park in front of this part of the building. So while it works for the first phase, I think it puts some severe limitations on the second phase to get the desired parking in front of your building.
Okay. Any more questions for either of them while they're both standing?
I have one. We've talked about, I'd like to go back to the parking there on the element of your increased stalls is essential for the opportunity of business in this area. Is that what you're proposing?
We built, I believe, 7 of these Verizon stores, and they've all varied between 22 and 24 parking spaces. And they've had some very dynamic grand openings, some where there was another existing Verizon store 2 blocks down the road, but they've just done tremendous business. And so we have every expectation that if we have 22 parking stalls, we'll use 22 parking stalls. If we have 24, we'll probably use at times 24, not all the time. But the last thing that we would want to do is be the neighbor who came in the last person that showed up at the party and we didn't bring enough parking spaces for our customers, and then therefore our employees or customers are parking on somebody else's property, we don't feel that that's super neighborly. And that's not the kind of welcome that we want to have, is that people are now concerned about who's using whose parking stalls.
So parking has an impact to your success there. Seems to me like you've done a number of these, and your analogy of 22 to 24 was a successful ratio. Is Horizon, what's their viewpoint? If we have less parking, are they not in favor of that, or what's their viewpoint on that?
Not that I necessarily agree with it, but their viewpoint is, how close people can park to the front door determines whether or not they're going to shop in this location.
Okay.
And so for them, it's important that at readily accessible, good, easy parking spaces in a flat parking lot is going to help their customers get out of the car and into the front door. That is the ultimate goal. And so we have not purchased the property. We're under contract to purchase this property if we can get the entitlements in place. Verizon has not yet signed the lease on this property because they are still waiting to see the outcome of the site plan. And so, as I had mentioned earlier, this is an infill opportunity, and if we have hard lines being drawn that nobody can park any more than the bare minimum number of parking spaces as required by law, I think that's going to create some challenges for people to think that their operations won't be impacted from that hard line being drawn in the sand.
Any more questions?
I have a question for the petitioner. You mentioned that, in past experience, previous stores, you will use full parking up to 24 at times.
At times.
At times was the key term for me. I'm not used to applying visitation to a number of stalls and so on, but how often at times would you use the full parking you're requesting?
Honestly, I think it's going to be grand openings, releases of new componentries, updated phones. And those seem to be, at least my pocketbook says, more and more frequently that, people are having to update, buy new phones, and they're doing a really good business. And their track record has shown that they open up a store. The rest of the town might not be doing gangbusters. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've gone down to Hobbs, New Mexico, Carlsbad, New Mexico, and towns that were kind of struggling with the downturn of the petroleum industry. We opened up some Verizon stores in those locations, and they just blew the roof straight off. And so the grand opening and then the re-releases of new technology, new phones, new gadgets that people have to have, those will be the times that their parking lots will be full.
We're talking quarterly for a period shortly thereafter?
I would say that, yes.
I would imagine during Christmas season would be very heavily shopped at that in any type of business like that would be impacted on that.
And we also felt that this is the previous development agreement modification precluded any other fast food drive-through restaurant because we wanted to see something else. Well, this is a new retail use, and we love the mix of one car parking and people. Hey, I need to check on my phone. I'll meet you over at Popeyes. When we get done here, let's go over to Arby's. One car can come park and visit two stores. We love that, and so we think that is a great opportunity that seizing right here would be beneficial to the neighborhood and the other users in the center.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment. I feel like I have a better understanding of Verizon possibly having like 5 staff members at a time. So I have a little bit of a better understanding why you would need more parking.
10. Yeah.
Even 10. That would be half of the spots, right?
10.
There's 10 on some of the plans that were shown to us before, but
That's 10 right by the front door, though, right? And then there would be let's see.
depending on the configuration, yeah.
Yeah, but they were shared.
It was shared with Arby's and that.
I wish we had a better picture of your proposal. in our packet or something. But
I have it in email. Yeah, I have it in the email.
okay, let me look really quick.
But it's not.
This one is if you're seeing it on your screen, shoot. Doing a great job, and I appreciate your help. This one, and I wish we had a pointer, but you look at the far left-hand side. Popeyes has 2 rows of parking, and really you only see the one car that's closest to 12th Street, and the rest are kind of shielded. The same kind of parking configuration is between Popeyes and Freddy's. Those, perpendicular to 12th Street, those parking rows. And so that's what we tried to replicate. We thought that there was some symmetry in that. And then again, as many parking spaces as we could locate behind the building, we did. Now you can also see our landscaping that we're proposing. The area that's dressed in red, again, we're actively leasing that out. We want to find that highest and best use, but I think that the kind of parking, building, and landscaping ratios that you see in the Verizon proposal, you would see mirrored in the red. There would be the building itself to those development standards contained within the development agreement modification, and then also landscaping and the necessary parking. But it would not be all blacktop. It would not be just a heat sink. It would be broke up just like you see with the Verizon facilities there.
I will say, I do like the configuration of that. I like where the landscaping is placed. Greg talked earlier about the more solid patches of landscaping rather than pockets here and there, which not so much for summer. I understand the heat pots or the heat collecting, but it's the removal of snow that is a problem. And I think that's very well thought out, and I like what's being presented. Yeah,
I like where the front on 12th Street is green space, and that softens that appearance to that. I'm also very conscious that in order to do a successful business, if 22 or 24 parking stalls is the formula by which they've used that for success, I think they've outlined their parking very well in that concept, but they've also put in green space, which softens and lessens the impact of blacktop in that area. I think it's a very well thought out plan.
One concern that I can see when we talked about it in our work session, the throughways that kind of went through the whole development get plugged off by this particular.
No one can see that.
Yeah, well, it's on the email. It's where it looks like the dumpster is.
Right behind you too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah, show us.
So rather than this throughway that used to kind of come and continue clear on through, and that would make access to this property or that parcel a little bit going to it less commercial,
With respect, I think from east to west, that drive aisle will still be open. And so if somebody wanted to go from, was it Lincoln to Grant?
Right.
You could still do that within the development, but we have incorporated some traffic calming features so that cars aren't going so fast. They are going to have to go around the pad and move to the end of the parking. But
well, you think on your feet really good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. But we look at that as let's slow speeds down. People are going to have to take care as they go through there. There's enough room to do so safely, but your speeds need to be prudent. And so that was a little bit of something that we designed into the site to help calm things down.
I see. Okay. All right. Any other questions for the developer? In as much as this was just thrown at planning, have you had a chance to look at this site plan a little better, Greg, or do you have any comment to it? Yeah, I could take this real easy. we're kind of thinking that maybe this is unfair to the planning staff to have this thrown at you right now. And maybe it's difficult to make a decision without letting this marinate a little bit.
Well, let me just give you a couple quick thoughts. One is, again, thinking of the second phase. I know we're talking about Verizon and what they need, and again, in the concepts we'd looked at to make the circulation work, and I didn't know if they're parceling off the piece now to 2 lots.
Right.
We looked at it as all one development. So the concern I have is what happens to the second development, because what I'm seeing on the drawing is we put a dumpster in front of the second development. We take away parking that could be the front door of that second development. And we're really saying, okay, what is that next piece going to be? Because now we're taking away some options and going to move it to something else that may not work completely. I see that they're showing the back out space. When they talk about traffic calming, 24 foot is a normal drive aisle. They're increasing it by 34 feet. So that does not traffic calm. That says I can go a little bit more haphazard because I got a lot more room with no obstruction. And so I do see a concern with that on the layout. I mean, the parking numbers, as I talked about, we would have seen trying to make that connection all as part of Verizon. And even though, we talk about the numbers, we're also anticipating the other buildings. So initially they would have built 28 parking stalls with the 10 that are in the back area. So Verizon would have access to begin with before the second phase is built for 28, because again, we were looking at a holistic for the 1.4 acres. So they could have that to their grand openings, then once the other comes in, now they start to share. So those are just some thoughts and considerations, just as I look at this. Just some items I have a concern with as far as how does that work for the next phase. It works great for the Verizon phase. What does it do to the next one?
Yeah, that's kind of my concern. That's what I was looking at with the traffic flow.
But wouldn't some of these questions be answered when that next phase comes in?
Well, unless we give it too much constraint by this development. If we do too much to favor this one, it may constrain the next one to have a hard time working.
Chair Heyer, I have a quick question. So I'm just wondering how come this wasn't vetted before it came to us?
Because the developer just brought it to us, and he can do whatever he wants. So,
with all respect, I think the Planning Commission heard this back in November. And so there was a big gap of time between when the Planning Commission heard it, before we were able to get it to a work session, and before you. In that interim, we've continued to revise our plan. And so it was, I didn't think to submit it to you because I thought that it was actually a pretty minor change. We were taking those 10 parking spaces, moving a trash collector, and that was really the essence of the change. The 14 parking spaces out the front door of the building haven't changed. The 4 parking spaces that are on the south side of the building, 2 of them ADA compliant, that hasn't changed. The parking row is really the only change to the site plan. So I thought, just for consistency's sake, stay with the application that was submitted to the Planning Commission. I thought this would be something that could be administratively switched out because it didn't substantially change the development.
Okay. Well,
and my last point that I would like to add is we submitted both of those site plans to the Planning Commission's consideration because we don't know if it's going to be a retail user or that sit-down restaurant. In the event that we can land that retail user that fits in that footprint, we would think that we would be able to just directly submit to the planning staff as long as they find us in adherence to the current form of the development agreement.
Right.
So if that sit-down restaurant wants to come or that retail user, as long as we abide by the site plans that were submitted, we would hope that we could move forward without having to come back for your consideration again.
Are you under some imminent deadline here to get these approved?
We've got the landowner is wanting us, we keep extending the contract out because of this lag in time from planning commission to this. They would like some resolve to their property, and we'd also like to get the lease signed with Verizon before they decide to invest in other markets. So is there something pressing me today? No, but they would like to see this moved forward as soon as possible.
I'd like to see it move forward as well. Would you be amenable to having a little bit extra time to work this out with our staff so we can bring back a more coherent or a more clear proposal for the council to consider? That be amenable?
And let me ask you this question. So the sit-down restaurant is the 5,400 square foot building, or the potential of the
Yes, ma'am.
11? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And by that one, I thought your parking code was for every 3 seats that are provided, 1 parking stall. And so we just recently had a Texas Roadhouse come into one of our developments in the Boise area, and so we just counted the seats. It was roughly 5,400 square feet, and so we just counted the seats and said, okay, roughly, if a sit-down restaurant of that flavor came to this site, this is how many parking spaces they would need. So that's what we used as the model for the parking field.
So if you're asking more time, what timetable are you looking at?
Considering a motion to extend so it does not entail a time certain, but would give our staff an opportunity to work with the developer to come up with a agreed upon solution.
And that's my question also. What are we trying to accomplish by extending?
This is my concern. I guess I can speak for myself. I would like our planning staff to be able to work this a little bit to make sure that this has the best opportunity for success for both projects, And we've obviously found Greg a little flat-footed here with this,
which
and I quite frankly rely a lot on his expertise. And I'd like him to have some time to think about it or to work with it.
So yeah, and I understand that. My question is, are you hoping or expecting that they work together and bring us back one idea, or come back with his idea and their idea?
It would be
we have
optimal if they could come to an agreement, a consensus. That would be great. I'm not sure that they could, but whether or not, we need to have everybody have an educated presentation.
If it adds, and it's not my place to jump into your deliberation, but we did remove the 10 parking spaces in the movement of the trash receptacle. But that was never going to be the front door on that west side of the building. And so, we were looking at the north side or even a corner entrance to the northeast of the property. So that was the reason we felt that the trash enclosure movement would be prudent. We honestly couldn't agree to any one site plan because we don't know if that next user for what's shown in red will be that restaurant user or retail, because their footprints will be drastically different. And so that's why we were happy with the Planning Commission's recommendation, as long as you abide by either of these site plans, whether it's retail or sit-down restaurant, stay within these bounds, and we would recommend approval. The only issue that we have with Mr. Montgomery's staff presentation is the adherence to that. The minimum parking requirement is the maximum allowed. That's going to be difficult for Verizon or any other tenant to accept.
How long would it take our planning to review it?
I would propose we'd give them 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Mr. Chair, if I could just jump in a little bit and add my part, maybe just to clarify the difference with the options that you have in your rules as far as continuing or extending. The continuing would require a date certain. So if you're comfortable, you think we can work it out in a couple of weeks, you can say, May 15th or whatever, and we'll be back. Extending is an option that we gave you a few years ago where we don't have to have that date certain. And what we do in that case is we kind of go back and reassess. We'll come back the next week and let you know how long we think it's going to be, and then kind of get a rough timeline. What that does require, according to your rules, is a renotice. So there's usually a couple of extra weeks in there. If it's 3 weeks, if we can sit down in the next few days and get some things hammered out, we could probably bring it back in a few weeks. So that doesn't necessarily mean a lot longer, but that does give the option to have some more flexibility in the timeline. I think to the point of having some more time to look at this, because you've just seen this site plan, because our planning staff has just seen this site plan today, we try not to do things on the fly like this because typically we will not catch everything, and so we like to have some time to think things through. There are some logistics that we need to work through on the back end as far as what's actually included in this development agreement, and I think it would be helpful for us to have a little bit of time to make sure that what's in that development agreement is accurate.
I would agree with that, and the developers made some very good points that the last to the dance shouldn't be a penalty. But I still think that there's got to be a way that we can accommodate, a reasonable number of parking places around the front door of that type of a location, and still be able to keep our parking down. I think there's got to be a compromise we can make somewhere along the way to do that, and I think that requires some time. That's kind of what has struck me today. I
guess I want to just follow up by I really like the two options, and maybe that's what we need to see in a similar situation where you have both the retail and the sit-down restaurant, because I can't tell how many total parking spaces that might be. I mean, I know how many it is for Verizon, but I don't know how many it is for Texas Roadhouse. I don't.
Yeah.
So if you go back to that slide there, if you can do the same scenario that you did in option in what you had presented earlier.
If you bring a Texas Roadhouse up to the north end of town, I'll do whatever I can for you. I love Texas Roadhouse. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
If we don't vote on these today, then we have to make a motion to table these, or what will be?
And continue.
I have one more question for the.
Do we provide direction with an extension?
I think it would be helpful to them.
I do too.
Okay.
Go ahead.
They do. Mr. Chair, if I could just answer that. You typically do. I think in this case it can be that we try to just figure out these site plans and have a chance for us to take a look at that and come back with some options that are a bit more vetted. I think that would cover everything we need to do to come back.
So you're suggesting a time?
I don't know. Maybe I could. You're okay with 2 weeks, Greg? Okay, yeah. I think we can get it done in 2 weeks. That would prevent us from having to notice that again. So May 15th, I think we can get it done by then.
And I'm more than ready and happy to make a motion when it's
I think there's one more
appropriate
question
for that.
so
Yes.
Vice Chair, why don't you go ahead?
A comment. Apologize for all the confusion and the procedure that we've gone through. It's my understanding that the council doesn't typically vet site plans at this level, so this is not a common occurrence here. Just want you to know that. Is the timeline that we've been discussing amenable to you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Appreciate your patience and understanding.
Yeah, and I just want to back that up that, I think we all want whatever goes in place there to be very successful. We just want to make sure we do it right.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, what, May 15th? Is
May
that
15th.
right?
Councilmember Lopez, you ready to go?
I'd like to make a motion that we
Yeah, the
postpone
meeting
these, extend these to May 15th, and bring it back to us for review.
And the motion wouldn't be to extend, it would just be to continue.
Ava?
Yeah, since those are two different things in your
Okay.
rules.
All right. Did we get a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Lopez, seconded by Vice Chair Nadolski, to continue till May 15th. I think before we vote, it would be well if we gave some direction, if we've got it. What do we want to see in the next revision?
I would love to see one. I hope that they can work and come up with something that works for both the developer and our planners. and that they try to give us one, something they agree to, and one option to vote on. That's just my personal.
Okay.
I would agree with that. I understand the issue about the dumpster, but to me, we're talking about 6 stalls, and I think this should not be. We're not far apart on that, so I would hope that they could work that out and come back with one proposal that we can vote on.
Our objective is to make sure that Horizon is successful, but also that our city is successful in presenting that program. So,
yeah, well, more so than that. I mean, so that Verizon comes. I mean, we don't want to keep postponing this and then try to do something that works for Verizon, and then all of a sudden they're in, Temecula, California.
I'm with Councilmember Blair. Half of my mind just to give the developer what the developer needs to be successful, period.
Yeah.
There's an example in my ward, your neighborhood, where there's been some conflict between different uses like this. I want development to be successful when it comes to Ogden.
Yeah.
And this is striking me as a bit of a procedural snafu at the moment that needs clarity. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we've ever had this kind of scenario before with this sort of wrangling back and forth at a site plan at this scale.
It's not often. I guess my concern is to continue to look at the yet unwanted piece to make sure that it continues to be a viable.
If I could add one piece to that, we are a development company that doesn't build with the hopes that they will come.
Yeah.
Because that's a good way to lose money.
Right.
Once we know what the tenant needs, what their specific requirements are for clearance height, windows, trash enclosures, kitchen areas, we will build it to their exact specifications, and that gives them the best opportunity to succeed, and then they can pay the rents that it cost us to buy the land and develop the property. Without speaking out of turn, when we originally submitted this application, the planning staff said, hey, you know what, we've seen too many scenarios like this. It's not something that we would support. And so I said, well, respectfully, could we still move this to the Planning Commission and let them consider it? Because we do have a 3,000 square foot tenant to go now, and we are confident that we can fill that back space. And then the planning staff returned back and said, well, how about we would support you, but as a condition of approval for that 3,000 square foot building out front, we would require you to build the building out back. And we said, frankly, that's 11,000 square feet at over $105 a square foot. That's over $1 million. And so we can't take that kind of risk, not knowing who the end user would be. And so I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get an agreement on a final site plan that will tell us exactly who or what that back space will be. We're not asking for any variances. We would abide by setback standards, use standards, building height requirements. We would abide by the design review standards. The issue is we moved 6 stalls on a site plan.
I think we have heard what you said. So we do have a motion and a second.
Can I just want to make sure.
Okay.
I want to be, I guess what I want to be clear is that if you've moved 6 stalls, does that other work if you build a 5,600 square foot retail or a 10,000 square foot retail? Does it still work by moving those 6 stalls? And I guess that's the part that I'm uncertain of right now. And that's what I need you all to think through in the next couple of weeks. If you move those 6 stalls, I mean, I don't think we want to have this conversation.
No, we don't want to do this in 2 weeks. We want to have it to be a little cleaner than this.
No, or in 2
or the
months
next
when
time
you
the
have
development agreement. Mm-hmm.
So that's why we don't want to say, okay, now we have to build 6 more stalls. I think we've moved 6 now. So.
Okay, so do y'all have enough direction on what to work on in the next 2 weeks? Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and this is a voice vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, well, thank you. To this, holy cow. Yes, I guess we are, because we have posted it. So please, yeah.
And I am completely on board with, we want to find somebody to fill that space. Because we've had, you know, just activity happening in the dead space, and it's been a long time, and we want to see a user there. And I think Verizon's a great opportunity. Obviously, it doesn't compete with Arby's, so that makes me really happy. And I like that you've given back some of the parking stalls, because that was our major concern, was, like he said, his customers or his employees taking up our parking space, because we do use all of our stalls at peak times as well. So I appreciate that you took that back into consideration. So I'm just saying, go Verizon. And I agree, I don't want them to go away. So as soon as we can make a decision, that'd be awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Please come forward and give us your name for the record. And
Parks, though, and I actually live right behind the unwanted space. And,
don't say unwanted.
Yeah, but anyways, it is a pretty small space. I am concerned about the new layout that you have there with the potential for residential housing on top of there. I don't know if that'd be completely fitting. I feel like it could get cluttery back there. You know, I don't mind Verizon being there. I am mainly concerned about that second space back there, though. It seemed like the proposed space is currently too much building for the space, and I would prefer something smaller, maybe something without a dead-end space back there, because I live just 12 feet from that fence line, and I am just concerned. Like, I would prefer if there was like a line of sight from 12th Street that you could see all the way back to the wall that would be between my house and the businesses, as much as we can, instead of that, you know, that one big building there in that unwanted space. So I don't know if that's still up for grabs or not, but you know, I would think that you'd have to kind of take both of those buildings into consideration. You know, if you could do one big Texas Roadhouse, that'd be great. but yeah, I don't know. Just yeah, good luck with everything. Just keep the residents in mind too. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. We will be reviewing this again on the 15th, sounds like, so, and hopefully there can be some consensus. That's kind of what I'm hearing from the council.
Chair Heyer, I would just like to thank Brandon, Whalen, and Hawkins for the work that they're doing and for the efforts that they're trying to bring to our city. So thank you, and not tonight, but we will get this taken care of, and we can get it going. And I appreciate the effort that you've continually put in with the different designs that you've come up with and trying to keep making something work. So thank you.
I may make a comment
yes,
as well.
Please, go ahead.
My comment's also directed to Mr. Whalen and the property owner. Just apologize for any confusion and frustration this may have caused. Certainly not indicative of how we usually do things, but I make the same commitment that Councilmember Blair has made. We want to take care of this, take care of it quickly, making sure that we're being mindful of the residents. It's never our intent to hold up development. It's never our intent to not account for the concerns of the residents. So we want to make sure we get it done and get it done right the first time. So appreciate your, in advance, your continued patience. Thanks.
Okay, next item on our agenda is item 9, due to the agenda re-swap there. So we've got new business, annexation of islands of unincorporated Weber County. I think
Mark Stratford will be
Mr. Stratford. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Heyer, council members. So the item the first item here is Resolution 2018-6, addressing the annexation of islands or portions of islands of unincorporated Weber County. And generally, when we're dealing with annexation in the past, that is accomplished usually through a petition, where a property owner is developing their property and wants to come in and do something, and they need to come into the city in order to do that, because that type of development requires municipal services. But in this case, we're talking about annexation not based on a petition, but upon the recommendation of the Weber County Commission. And specifically, what we're going to talk about this is an annexation policy plan map that's in our general plan. And if you look at the area labeled Area 7, which is on the west side of the city, you can see that's kind of a jagged area and has historically been a jagged area. We'll also be talking a little bit about Area 6 on the very south end of the city and a little bit of land next to the airport. But in order to go forward without a petition and upon the recommendation of the county commission, these are the requirements that have to be addressed. First of all, that the area proposed to be annexed consists only of one or more unincorporated islands within the city, within the county. Second of all, that it is in the expansion area of the municipality. Well, the map shows that it's in our declared expansion area as part of our general plan. And finally, that the county goes through, has a public hearing, and makes the recommendation of annexation. And the things that they ask about in their recommendation is, are the areas that they're looking at, can they be more efficiently served by the municipality than by the county? Are they not likely to be naturally annexed in the future? And this is really one of the biggest questions, because the reason this jagged area kind of exists is that there are some areas in there that probably won't naturally come in over time because either they're too small or because they're already developed. And so that's a big deal, because the orderly growth of the city is with the expectation that development will come along and require city services. But where city services are already being provided, there's not really any motivation for people necessarily to come into the city. And this is where the county steps in and says, okay, let's look at these four factors. The other two are, will annexation facilitate the consolidation of overlapping functions of government so that the county isn't providing the same services that the city provides and vice versa? And finally, will it result in an equitable distribution of community resources and obligations? And so it's interesting, if you look at that Area 7 now, we're going to zoom in on that area as well as Area 6 on this next slide. So on the left side of your screen is that area on the west side of the city, and the kind of the lightest color, the closest to white, are the unincorporated areas. And that actually has changed a little bit since the plan was adopted, because a few areas have come into the city, but we're still facing a number of areas that are not going to come in. And then on the right side is that area on the south side of the city. And we're not talking about the place that has that blue kind of water basin there. We're talking about the area right off Harrison Boulevard that's surrounded by South Ogden in green on the south and Ogden City in brown on the north. And so the other point about this is for you to understand what the island means, because the island is created there between South Ogden City and Ogden City. On the west side of the city, on the left side of the screen, the island is created by the fact that you have Roy, West Haven, and Ogden City surrounding it. So there are incorporated boundaries around all of these, and that's what makes them islands and why the county has looked at these areas and made recommendations for you. So if you have any questions at any point, feel free to stop me and I'll try to answer any questions you might have. So just to look at each of these individual areas, we have about 7 areas, and they're just highlighted in yellow. And these are the areas that the county commission has proposed or has recommended that Ogden City look at annexing. And so this is the first area. It includes the area around I-15 off of 24th Street and to the south of I-15 on 2550 South. So there's, again, a lot of development already has happened there. The space in between I-15 and the north side of the map there is areas that will come in the future, and that's why that's not highlighted in yellow, even though it's not yet incorporated. So then we have a couple of smaller islands here in between Hinckley Drive and between the railroad and then a little bit further to the north there. Again, this is all substantially developed. Then we move a little bit to the west towards 1900 West, again, substantially developed. The area to the south there that's not highlighted will come in the future as growth occurs there. Then this area is just closer to Pacific. What's the Pennsylvania, excuse me. Yeah, I didn't know how to pee. Closer to Pennsylvania Avenue, again, a developed area that is. Then all of these areas have been receiving certain services from Ogden City for quite some time. And then this is the area on the south end of the city off of Old Post Road, where, again, it's a small area. It's got residential housing on it, so it's not likely to come in on its own. And so the county looked at that and made a recommendation that the city consider annexing this land. And then the final area is just next to the airport between I-15 and Airport Road, which is mostly just a railroad line, but is an area that they can't really provide any services to, and it's adjacent to Ogden City, so they've made that recommendation. So the process that you're being asked tonight to do is to adopt a notice of intent resolution, which sets forward a process to consider this, and then it will ultimately come back to you in a public hearing where everybody who is affected has the opportunity to come and address you and provide their perspective on it. So the notice of intent resolution does not commit you to an absolute outcome in the future. It just says you're taking the recommendation the county made and you're going to start the formal process for that dialogue to happen at the city level. The Planning Commission will make recommendations for each of these islands about what the zoning should be. That will also come back to you at the time that you have your public hearing. And then if you determine that annexation is appropriate and vote on that, then you would also vote on the zoning for those areas at the same time. And so that's basically what you're being asked to do tonight. The resolution does include a specific date for the public hearing, which will be July 10th. And that's the date that people would be notified of, that they could come and speak to you if they want on these issues.
Any questions for Mr. Stratford? Thank you. I noticed we've got our county people here. Did you want to address us at all? Just hear the lesson, huh? Okay.
You got to hear more about parking stalls than he was planning tonight.
Okay. So, what's the pleasure of the council?
Chair Heyer, I'll make a motion. Sorry, go ahead. To adopt proposed resolution 2018-6 as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Nadolski, seconded by Councilmember Blair, to adopt 2018-6, declaring the intent to annex and setting the hearing for July 10th, 2018. Is that accurate? Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Vice Chair Nadolski.
Aye.
Chair Heyer.
Aye. That passes. And the process is in motion now, so.
And Chair Heyer, I'd also like to make a motion that
Excuse me, I think.
Yeah, sorry. Yep, sorry.
So now we're here for the annexation of a portion of Weber County at 860 West 24th Street.
So this item is somewhat connected to the first item, and just in the sense that it involves annexation where there's not a petition. The difference in this case is that 860 West 24th Street was not recommended to you by the county commission, so that's a slightly different process for this particular parcel than for the other 7 that we talked about. And it's also a slightly different question because as an annexation without petition and without county recommendation, the question is really who's it affecting and how is that property currently being serviced? And so the questions we ask here is, are there fewer than 800 residents in the area, and has the city been providing services for at least 1 year? And in this case, we're talking about this Cash Commodities property, which is on West 24th Street. And the city, for a number of years, has provided water service, sewer, and public safety services to this property. And so the questions you'll ask here will be somewhat similar to the others. There will be notice that goes out. There will be a public hearing also proposed for July 10th. Cash Commodities, the owner of that property, can provide input. They can also protest, and if they protest, then they have the opportunity to essentially opt out of the annexation. But because of the fact that this property is developed, the sense was that it made sense to go ahead and see if the annexation could be done at this time rather than waiting for some time in the future. One benefit that Cash Commodities would receive from being annexed, and that anybody else who's not in the city and receiving city water services, is that they currently pay a higher fee for their water. They pay double rates than if they were in Ogden City. And if they were annexed, then that would go down to the standard rate for Ogden City businesses. So it's the same physical process, but there are just a couple of different questions that get asked during that process. But again, the Planning Commission will make a recommendation for the zoning of this property that will come to you on July 10th, just like it will for those other parcels.
Any more questions for Mr. Stratford? Okay. Thank you. We'll look for a motion.
Chair Heyer, I propose that we adopt Resolution 2018, portion of Weber County of 860 West 24th Street.
Or the intent.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember White, second by Councilmember Blair, to adopt Resolution 2018-7, declaring the intent to annex and setting the public hearing for July 10th. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Vice Chair Nadolski.
Aye.
Chair Heyer.
Aye. That passes unanimously. And I guess the fun will start for us on the 10th of July. So now we're at item 8 on our agenda. This is the mayor's proposed tentative fiscal year 2018-2019 budget. Welcome, Mayor.
Thank you, Chair and council members. As I've mentioned many times in the past, this is always a great day for us because after basically a year's worth of work, we get to relieve Lisa and Camille and so many of the department directors of some of that burden and place it firmly in front of you. So we do want to take a moment to thank them. They have been phenomenal rock stars. Lisa Stout and Camille Cook worked tirelessly on this throughout the year. On top of that, they had ERP, which we'll talk about a little bit throughout this process. I also want to thank our department directors. They get relieved of this, and they all get to take their hands off of each other's throats. As you know, we spent a lot of time through, we probably had 5 different retreats this year, full-day retreats, where we sat down and really worked through the numbers and visited every department and the challenges that are there, the needs that are there, and collectively they came together and really did a great job of prioritizing what those needs are. I bring my full confidence into this process and into what we believe are going to be the best returns on investment for these taxpayer dollars that we are all very unique stewards of. There's no quicker way to lose public confidence than to not have this process be extremely transparent and extremely effective. And so we take that responsibility seriously. And so, again, it's a pleasure to be in front of you and to present some highlights. I'm going to walk through a couple of things that we've done, and then I'm going to as Mark has said a few times, I get to wear the white hat. He gets to come in with the black hat. So I appreciate the opportunity to wear the white hat as we go through this. Some of the unique things that we did this year I'd like to highlight a little bit. ERP, we'll talk a little bit about that further, but as we looked at the hour logs to get that implemented, we were at about 25,000 hours in terms of all the different departments and the training and the implementation and everything else. So that was a really big thing. We've got a new insurance broker. I think we're cleaning that up. We're very excited, and you'll hear some more information later about what we're doing with our health insurance and our dental insurance. One of the unique things I'm really proud of this year is the Leadership Academy. we all have a vested interest in leaving this organization and all of our efforts in a better spot than I think some of us have found it. That's the key of leadership, training the people up behind you so when you pass the torch, they're prepared to run with it and to keep doing great things for our community. We had 156 attendees, different unique attendees in that Leadership Academy. So HR and a number of others put together this academy, and we brought in a lot of the people that may not have had good leadership opportunities or an opportunity to learn in that environment. And so we're really proud that we had 156 of our employees attend that Leadership Academy throughout the year. We did some great fleet enhancements. We have, for the first time in my 6 years, fully funded facility maintenance. This building's a great example of that. We're 20 years old. We didn't have to fully fund all of that ongoing maintenance for a lot of years. Now that we're 20 years old, we're starting to see it get a little bit tired, and we've robbed other accounts. This year was the first time we've been able to fully fund facility maintenance. And you're all very aware of some of the challenges we've had in public safety over the last year and a half along the Wasatch Front. As been mentioned a number of different times, we had 605 open positions just in police along the Wasatch Front, and the efforts and initiatives you have all voted for in terms of police education and the shift differential have made a big difference in that. So those are efforts that are not easy, but we're really proud of the work that we've all collectively been able to do to address some of those challenges. New development, I appreciated the comments that we don't want to get in the way of developing some of our blighted or vacant areas, and that's continued to be something that's been very important for us. So Stonehill Homes, a lot of you were able to attend that ribbon cutting. I unfortunately was out of town. I was told that after the first 3 days of that ribbon cutting and announcement, we had 3 homes under contract and we had 50 people on the wait list. And we can only build 3 or 4 at a time because that's the way the funding works. So you build the first 3 or 4, then you bring in the next, and then you bring in the next. So to have 3 under contract and 50 on the wait list in the first 3 or 4 days of that was something that we were really proud of. Road's complete, and those homes are under construction now. The Monarch, that's going to be a phenomenal development. That's, again, another private development, an art center to create gallery space, exhibit hall, cafe, artist studios, and hopefully a community maker space. And that's currently under construction. If you haven't been by it, I'd encourage you to go look. I drove by that for decades, and it didn't have anything in it. It had a couple restaurants that came in and out, but I think the vision for that Monarch and the way that capital stack worked with new market tax credits and everything else is a testament to some of our economic development people and those that are willing to be really dynamic in their approach to addressing some of those tough problems. I'm really excited about that one. The proposed mixed-use development at the Flowers Foods building, right now, that currently, to give you an update, has approximately 320 apartment units that will be all market rate right in the heart of our downtown here. 55,000 square feet of Class A office space, additional public parking to help facilitate what's happening on 25th Street. And it's currently in the design phase, and the demolition of that existing building will be scheduled for July pending budget approval from you all. They've been working on the asbestos and some of the other things to really clean that that demolition up. So we're very excited about that, although you don't see a lot happening out front right now. There's been a lot happening behind the scenes to get that stood up and to get some momentum there. So we're really excited about that. Mixed-use project at 24th and Grant. This is dubbed the Gramercy Square. Approximately 260 apartments, 10,000 to 20,000 square feet of retail, 15,000 square feet of commercial, public space for community gathering, and that's currently also in the design phase. Something of that scale takes a long time to get done. If you can think about it, it's the parking lot right now where that services the Union Grill. So we're going to expand that a lot. We've got some additional dollars to build a parking deck out back and hide the parking, but bring a bunch of residential and commercial in there. That'll be another very large scale development that we're very excited about. Mixed-use project at 2337 Grant, the floor system building. I tried at one point to see if there was a way I could build a rooftop deck and get a corner condo so I could overlook Raptors games as they were going on and barbecue on the deck. I was told that I'm not eligible for any kind of conversation like that, but I do think that's a really unique building that's been vacant for quite some time, and we're really excited to see that come together. Again, that's another private development that's currently under construction. There's a new brewery coming in that'll be on the main floor. We're excited to C and commercial space on the second and third floors. Then downtown parking enhancements, working with the county on a mixed-use project on 23rd. We're excited about the Riverbend, the big first phase one. Townhomes are nearing completion. All are sold out in that first phase with South River, so that's a great benchmark for us to hit. And we're working with other developments on project just west of Slackwater and the Bingham's building right now. So we expect construction to start on that this year. So I think that'll be another great addition down there. And then the Creative District, we're currently in the approval phase, approved out of Planning Commission and recommended for approval of the City Council. So lots going on there. Didn't want to just leave a couple of those bullet points for that new development, which I think is really important. I wanted to give you a quick update on all of that. ERP updates, I mentioned that earlier. Munis payroll and HR, you can kind of see the calendar for how that's been implemented. Anytime you take a city software program with all of the regulations we have for government and transparency and record keeping and everything else and do something entirely new, it is an enormously heavy lift. And so there have been a lot of people that have spent very, very many late days and nights doing their day job and all of their regular duties, plus trying to pick this up and implement that. So I want to recognize all of the staff that have worked so diligently in getting this up and ready to go. We're very proud of the work that they've done. You talk to almost everybody that's been in the old software program, and it was almost DOS versus digital or Blu-ray. And so although there are pains when you go to a new software program as you learn it, you're used to one system, you have to learn another one. We think this will pay great dividends for us as we get it implemented and get people used to using this software. So it's been a really important thing for us and a huge priority. This has always been something we talk about and try to stay focused on, job creation and business commitments. You can see what we've done in the last number of years in terms of full-time employees. 2018, the top 5 job creation projects, those are all brand new people. I'd add one that we didn't have on that list is Pinterest. We're certainly curious and wanting to expand a lot of our technology companies, and Pinterest is kind of under the Market Star umbrella, which moves back and forth, but we've got over 200 people here now working for Pinterest, kind of under the Market Star umbrella, so we're really excited about that. That continues to grow. New business commitments, new construction values of $40 million, new sales revenues of $9.6 million, and the increase in sales tax revenue for that is $96,000. I think we're up over 8% year to date, and so we haven't seen those kinds of numbers in quite a while, and we're really proud of that. Community development, I think we asked you a number of years ago to take a bit of a risk with us in the Quality Neighborhoods project. Recognize that we're only as strong as the people that are around us. I think somebody in this room started the hashtag Neighbor Up. I think this is a great example of some of that. We want this to be a destination of choice, and we want people to move in and feel like they have a great place to live, work, play, learn, and raise a family. And if neighborhoods are healthy, everything else that surrounds us are going to be healthy. So the infill housing, 2,700 Gramercy, 3 new homes are completed, 1 underway. Talked about the Stonehill development and the 50 people on the wait list after the first weekend that we're really excited about. Purchase, rehab, and sale. This is a project that ONA and Ogden we've talked about a little bit. In the last 20 plus years, they've done almost 1,800 home remodels and rehabs, homes that a private developer or a private person wouldn't really be able to come in and make pencil. They've gone in, completed those rehabilitations, put single families in them, and really helped stabilize some neighborhoods. This year, 7 have been completed and sold, 2 completed and listed for sale, and right now we have 14 underway. Some really unique ones in that list too. That would take me to unit reduction. One of the great things about our community is that we do have some of these really unique homes that were built a long time ago. They do take a little bit of extra TLC, as some of those that have been in the Jefferson District can attest to, but we have 9 unit reduction projects underway. And that purchase, rehab, sale project that Ward Ogden does such a great job of, we've been able to get some of those that have been carved up into 4 or 5 apartment units, have been a drain on the neighborhood. They are under full rehab, and as they peeled back some of the old walls and drywall that they'd put over features, they recognized these are really amazing. These still have really unique bones, and these will be really great homes and very, very highly sought after areas. So we're really excited about those unit reductions and some of those rehabs that are underway right now. Help loans, we have 27 complete and 23 underway right now, and then on in Ogden we have 21 down payment loans that have closed. So still a lot of progress there, and the real estate market is as hot as we've seen it in a long time. So I don't know what that means. I'm not going to come in and gloom and doom. We'll make hay while the sun's shining, but it really does help to take a lot of those old rentals and those flip houses out of that cycle and put single families in them again. So we'll do as much as we can during this process to help with that. We've always tried to make our employees, I'm the first one to stand up and say that. I sometimes wonder exactly what it is that I do without a really unique group, a team and staff around me. They're the ones that do all the heavy lifting. They're the ones on the business end of the shovel. And so we want to make sure that we take care of our employees and the people that are here. So right now we have a 1% proposed cost of living adjustment, 4% proposed merit increase for employees that scored well on their evaluations. Public safety loyalty program, which we've talked about quite a bit, depending on the certified tax rate. And we have a creation of a committee to evaluate and discuss the benchmarking process. One of the things we found as we benched against other cities is that Salt Lake City had moved to benching against San Francisco and Seattle and Denver, markets that are wildly different from Ogden, Utah. And so we recognized that we weren't really benching against like communities. So we have a committee that's coming together to evaluate different places we should be benching and if benching is even effective. So that's going to be made up of city employees, public safety employees, and a number of others. And that committee will work over the next year to really look at that and make sure we're really measuring apples to apples instead of groups that are wildly different. And then we did a survey of surrounding communities that have forms of government very similar to what we have here, and we recognize that almost every other community that we studied with a similar form of government offers insurance benefits for city council members, and so we wanted to include that in the budget as well. We think that's fair, and so we wanted to present that as part of our overall budget. You guys work really hard for what you do and how you represent. It's a 24/7 job, as you all know. And so we think benefits for that kind of effort and work are appropriate, and would like to recommend that in the budget. A couple of capital improvement highlights: property acquisition and demolition of the Courtyard Inn. That will be part of the big Monarch project. That's going to tie all of that together on our historic 25th Street and put that arts and creative district all the way up to the library. We appreciate that. We think that's going to be a big deal. Station 4 seismic retrofit and remodel. A lot of you know that a lot of our fire stations, with the exception of 3, which we just rebuilt, they were built many years ago, and they do need to be updated. This is the last one on the list, so we're excited about that. Curb, gutter, and sidewalk replacement, street construction, facilities improvements. You'll see as this is the community investing in itself. They voted for Prop 1, and most of those improvements are a result of the Prop 1 money that they voted to impose on themselves. So we want to put that directly back into the community. A lot of you that were viewing these budgets a number of years ago, you look at the $350,000 for curb, gutter, and sidewalk. We didn't see those kinds of numbers at all. And so we do appreciate the community investing in itself. And we are a little bit older, and there's a lot of deferred maintenance that needs to be put back into the community. So we're excited about that. City playground enhancements. The city will be putting a good chunk of money into that, but we also got some ramp money for that. We're excited about that. Miles Goodyear Park Complex, same thing. City will do a lot of the work and a lot of the in-kind and put some of the money in, but ramp will help us get that over the top. And then the Lester Park improvements that we have at $150,000 are some of the highlights for the capital improvement. So that's my 50,000-foot flyover, and I'm going to let Mark kind of get into some of the rest of it. But we certainly appreciate being able to give this to you. We appreciate your participation in this. Some of this will be a revisit to things we've addressed over the course of the year. But I'll give it over to Mark, and I'm certainly happy to come back and answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
It's a pleasure to be here. My 15th budget presentation. And yes, I had a sweater vest on the first one. Thought I'd just answer that before he...
Work up stuff.
You know, so we did the FY 2005 budget many, many years ago. It's amazing how much progress we've made as a city in those years. The budget presentation wasn't as cheery and rosy and having so many wonderful things that are in the budget as they are now. So it's easier to deliver a budget message with the progress I think the city's made in the last 15 years. I think it's interesting to look at the comparison of the numbers with what we're proposing. What we're proposing is a $201 million budget with all considered, all areas of the city. If you think about it, I don't know that many of you ever thought that you would be an executive in a $201 million corporation. It's pretty impressive that you set policy, you set the budget in a corporation that size. There's a lot of responsibility that goes with that. And may I add that it's a complicated budget. City accounting is difficult because of the complexities of all the rules that we have to abide by. We're increasing in some and decreasing in others, and the explanation for all of those you'll be finding out in the next few work sessions. But overall, we're growing, and we're making progress as a city. For the general fund to grow 4% in this day and age is pretty darn good, and we're really proud of that. The total city, which includes water and sanitary sewer and sewer, some of that is bonds. Some of that is the effect of some of the bonds that we're working on. The redevelopment agency is we closed an RDA. The American Can RDA is no longer open, and so that's part of the reduction of the RDA. The strike force, a normal grant that they get hasn't come through yet, so you see a little reduction in money there. We think we'll see that, and you'll probably see that in a budget opening, or it might even be a friendly amendment before the budget's approved, depending on when we receive that. So all in all, the building authority is easy. We paid down some debt, so we're always going to see, I think, that budget reduce. And once again, I don't want to steal Lisa's thunder next week when she gets to tell you about the building authority, because she looks forward to that more than probably any other responsibility she has, and that's probably one of the shortest meetings of any that we have over time. If you look at some of the interesting parts, and this is kind of the highlights and maybe the lowlights of revenue, we're forecasting an increase, substantial increase in property tax, partly because of the expiring RDA and partly just because of new growth. Some numbers that aren't in concrete yet would suggest that maybe we were conservative, that those numbers might come in even higher. Of course, those numbers don't include the increase in growth, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Sales tax looks like we're off the charts wild with what we're predicting. I want to say that number, that 1.1 million, is from last year's budget. So with the budget we set for this year, we're comparing back to the budget. Currently, we are 8.2% higher than we were last year in sales tax. That's off the charts. We haven't seen that kind of growth since about 2007. If you know what happened in 2007, it's kind of a scary thought. We are actually 5.28% over budget in sales tax. So even though that number looks huge. It's not as big as you really think, because we're kind of achieving a lot of that already this year in what we're doing. Franchise tax, which is really a sales tax on natural gas and electricity, has actually been going down, and we think that there's been some reduction in fees. Rocky Mountain Power has gone and sought. We think we've had some mild weather, and so right now we're not seeing. We've seen a decrease in what we're receiving in franchise. Now, I want you to go home, and I want you to use as much electricity and natural gas, and I want you to encourage everyone else to, because we could use the revenue. When I see my bill at home, I'm always happy with it. When I come here, I wished it was higher and that everybody else's was higher. Telecommunications is another area that they do not tax data, and so many of our citizens use more data now than they even use telecom, and so that continues to decrease. We're suggesting that's one that we need to look at again with the legislature, and maybe they need to up the rate just a little bit. They toned it down several years ago because they thought it was too hot, and it would have been about right if they had have not messed with it. So a couple of other of the highlights, the license and permits, that's business license. You see that's down. It should be down more than it is. The reason is the legislature, in their wisdom, eliminated business licenses for home businesses, and so that was a substantial amount of money that we no longer can collect. And so to keep that to just a reduction of 3.22% was pretty good, and we're hoping we can increase collections on business licenses that are not being paid and help that to grow. You can see some of the rest of the increases. Union Station's probably an increase because we're hoping for some revenue, some admissions off of the museums, and hopefully a little bit of lease revenue. General fund revenue, it breaks down this way. Taxes is the biggest portion of what we get. The rest of the fees that we get in transfers is a small portion compared to the taxes. Breakdown of the taxes, sales tax is 45% of the taxes we receive, property tax is 31%, and of course franchise is 21%. So we rely pretty heavily on sales tax. We'd like to get that a little better balance between sales tax and property tax. Property tax tends to be the stabler tax between the two. It worries me to have so much reliability as a city in our sales tax numbers. And those of you, well, Leanne and I were here when we had the downturn, and we struggled because our sales tax numbers just dropped like a rock, and that was a problem. Challenges ahead. I thought this, I was hungry at lunch when they were showing this slide. In 1978, you could get a lot more for lunch than you can in 2018 with the same dollars. I think in 10 years, you'll just get a few chips, probably for $6.99. You can see the trend of prices and how they're going. We kind of showed this that slide and others last year, and Janine did too. Janine did a great job of trying to help us understand how things have really changed, and yet some of the things that we charge revenue for have not changed. We talk headwinds every year, and the threat of inflation is looming. If you read the financial pages every day, they talk about inflation and they're concerned about inflation. So I put threat just because I don't know that we're really in inflation except for construction inflation, and construction inflation is going wild. And as we talk about water rates and a few other things, we're going to be talking about the construction inflation because it's going to dramatically impact us. An example of construction inflation, when we first started talking about the BRT with UTA, they estimated the project would be about $60 million. Inflation now has taken that price to $75 million, and that may be low. So construction inflation is something that we're trying to look at, we're trying to evaluate. We're trying to see, should we be bonding to take advantage of prices before they continue to rise and increase projects. That's a debate we have a lot internally on what's the right thing to do. One other thing, I'll mention two more on this list. Consistent employee raises. You know, when we hire employees, we hire them into a salary range, and they know that this is the bottom and this will be the top of what they can make in that job. It was demoralizing for many years prior to Mayor Caldwell being mayor for them to not receive opportunities to move up in that range. They all look at their career. They all know. There's a state employee sitting here who knows when he retires, he wants to have as much money as he can possibly have for the last 3 years of his career, because that's what they're going to base his retirement on. Keeping good employees is hard if you're not rewarding them and not recognizing them with money so that they can advance in their career. In corporate America, when the corporation made money, I made more money. And when the corporation didn't make money, I didn't make more money. We can't do that as a government entity. We can't reward because we don't make a profit. We have to have a balanced budget. I think it's really important, and I encourage you to be very supportive of us trying to keep our good employees. I will put our employees up against any other for the amount of work that they do, the dedication they have to their jobs. I think we have superior employees. And from 2000 to 2000, probably 6 or 7, we reduced staff dramatically. We cut to the bone and beyond the bone. And your council executive director will remember that well, because she watched a lot of people go out the door. I think we're below the amount of employees we should have. And I think that we have just dedicated people who are willing to work their very best. And a thank you for them is every year that we're able to hopefully give them a 4% increase. And this year we're recommending the 1% COLA. I think both are really important to tell these employees how grateful we are for what they do for our citizens. One last one I'd want to just talk about headwind, and that is employee retention. We've talked about employee retention when it comes to public safety in the last little while. We haven't talked as much about the retention we're starting to have problems in some of the other skill positions in the city. It's hard to hang on to attorneys. It's hard to hang on to accountants. It's hard to hang on to engineers. It's hard to hang on to inspectors. There are many jobs that have specific skill to them that they can work in government, they can work outside government. And hanging on to those is getting more difficult and more difficult and more difficult. We need to continue, I think, to pay our people to recognize that. I think it's important to keeping the workforce. I believe, and I said this down at the League of Cities and Towns, they had a caucus meeting for large cities. And I said, I think the number one problem government will be facing in the next 10 years is being able to hire people. Most of the generations that are coming up will not work for 34 years, 35 years for 57% of their salary. It's not going to happen. And I know very few of them, my grandkids included, who I will be surprised if they could stay in a job 5 years without wanting to move on and moving to a different career. I personally, and I'm an old guy, I'm a baby boomer, and I'm on my 3rd career currently. And I think that's only going to become more and more and more. We have to figure out how to retain employees, how to hire employees, how to go find them, how to compensate them, and it's going to be a different way of compensating than we currently have. I think it's going to be a crisis. I really do. When I hear how many of the people that currently are working at Hill Air Force Base that are going to retire in the next 2 years, it scares me to no end, because they're going to be coming and taking some of our good people up there and trying to entice them to work on the federal level. One other thing, if you don't mind me getting on my soapbox for just a brief moment, and by the way, those are Johnson & Johnson Band-Aids, in case you wondered. I think that the tax structure is broke. It was built decades ago, and it doesn't work currently. And if you look at it, we really only have a two-leg stool for revenue. And we need a third. And I think that a lot of the issues that they're trying to solve in our state over the legislative session and others could be solved if they would just share the income tax with cities. So it would change the very nature of what cities are going after. No longer would they go after the big box and some of those other things. They would be going after high-paying jobs. They would want those people to live close to where they get the business to come. So it would take care of some of the density issues and some of the housing issues that they're looking for. It's a constitutional amendment, and I don't. Utah doesn't like to do constitutional amendments. But I really think cities aren't going to be able to exist. They're not going to be able to provide the services they provide currently if something's not done to change the tax structure, the tax system. It needs mending in the worst way. And I continue to say that as loud as I can in every venue I can at a state level, that we need help doing this. It's starting to get a little traction from others, and it needs to continue. All right, let's talk property tax for a minute. Property tax is been set up to be revenue neutral. You all know this. So if, let me go to the next slide. I think it shows it better. When our values go up, our property tax rate goes down. When our property values fall, then our rate goes up. We're in a cycle I don't know that I've seen in my time here at Ogden City, and that would be 15 years plus 2 years on the council, where values are rising so rapidly. I've never seen Ogden go through that. Ogden didn't go through that in the boom that happened in 05, 06, 07. They never saw that. So we never really fell off because we never ever really rose. We're in a really good spot where these values are rising. And I think the only way to realize that is to continue to keep our rate level. Not to increase the rate, just to keep it level, because then we realize the values that we have increased in our city, and it helps us to be able to fund the services and things that we are trying to provide. If you think about the price of a new home, it's changed in 20 years 320%. I think we were recently told that they're estimating in 10 years, 15 years, that the average price of a home in Utah will be $680,000. Oh, $850,000. $850,000. I'm starting to worry about my 14-year-old grandson and how he's going to afford a home in 15 years. Average income, average car price, you can see all of these. They're fascinating to me how fast they're growing and increasing in price. Just to revisit our stats, you can see how much they have changed over the last few years. I'm concerned that the ratio of police officer to resident is 647 to 1. There are other cities that their goal is 200 to 1. We're nowhere near that. And fire is 826 to 1. I'm hoping that I catch them on a really good day if I need them. We need revenue to be able to pay for the growing costs it takes to provide these services. Property tax, who gets what on property tax? We've shown this before. If you want to know where we are, we're 2 floors in the red. We only got 2 floors of the whole building. You can see that the school district has most of the floors on the bottom. And you can see on the property tax bill, most citizens, when they get their property tax bill, what's the first thing they call the city and say, look how much mine went up. And it isn't all us. In fact, it's only 18% of it is us. But it's important to get the message out, to continue to get the message out. By the way, we this year put together a budget in brief, and it's a little informational piece. This is our beginning. This is version 1, and we're going to make sure that these are handed out to you tonight before you leave, and we'll be able to get more if you want to start sharing them with other people in the community so that they can understand the budget process. And some of this kind of information they'll be able to understand, hopefully. As you have suggestions, as we get through this budget process, don't tell them to us now. Tell us at the end, and then we'll, as we do version 2 next year, we'll be able to improve it even more. I think it's a remarkable first step of our city to try and come up with some literature that we can put in people's hands and help them to understand this complicated system, or complicated to people who aren't around it a lot. This was the economic outlook that we showed you last year. We've pretty well been right on, although I think we've actually grown more than what they predicted we would grow. This is the quote this year, and I'm only going to call your attention to a couple of sentences. Right at the end.
Right?
What?
You know we can't read that, right?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just turn. Yeah.
I can read that one. Right now, we're in the third longest expansion in the last 100 years, so we've been expanding for a long time. The question isn't if we will, but when we will. When, in other words, will there be a recession? And we're in uncharted territory. They have no history to go back on to be able to predict where we are, and some of them try. If you go on some of the financial pages, there are a lot of, every other day I think I need to take my 401k into safer waters, and then I feel good about where it is. But we're optimistic, but we're cautious. And I think sometimes with the national political scene, we have no reason to be overly excited because we don't really know what's going to happen from day to day. And I think that's a problem. I told you the American Can expired. We were receiving $525,000 of increment. Now that goes back to all our partners. The city's portion that we'll be receiving in FY 2019 will be $100,000. This tax year, we have 3 districts that will be expiring: Lester Park, Park Boulevard, Wall Avenue, but we won't see that tax for a couple years because it takes a while to go through the cycle. Those 3 are relatively small RDAs. Now, the mayor mentioned that we're proposing this. I kind of want to apologize that we haven't proposed it before now. As we've looked around and saw most cities give this benefit to their council members, we felt very strongly that this is the right thing to do. The cost to the city is $65,000. That includes $3,250 to those who opt out. To all our employees when they opt out of insurance. So if we have a employee whose spouse has insurance and they choose to opt out here, they get $3,250 a year, and that's divided over 26 pay periods. We felt it only fair to recommend to you that we do the same. So that $65,000 includes those who we were told would take the insurance, and to the rest we gave the opt-out feature. We think this is the right time to do it. We think that's a reasonable amount of money to absorb in the budget. And we think it'll be easier come next year when there's an election and maybe new council members come on, that we'd be able to absorb them into this benefit then. We're honored, actually, because we know how hard you work. And we, having been a former council member who remembers the pittance of amount of money that used to be deposited into my account, how little you get. And so and this is another really, I think, nice way to be able to say we appreciate you, and this is a benefit that you deserve. Health insurance. The mayor said we changed brokers. I want to tell you why we changed brokers real briefly. I've hated the broker system since I've been here. Brokers get paid on the back end from insurance companies. And I've always worried about their loyalty to me because they're not getting the money from me, they're getting it from the insurance companies. That's really bothered me. I was talking with the CEO of Golden West Credit Union, and he told me it's bugged him for years. And so Golden West Credit Union started an insurance brokerage. And we decided to switch to them, and no longer are those back-end fees being paid to our broker. We have complete transparency of what they're going to make. By taking those fees out, we were able to lower our bids from the insurance companies. We've had a significant year of usage. We've had some cancers and some other things that rack up large bills, and that's what the insurance is for. We don't blame that whatsoever. But we started with a 15% increase in insurance, which is a substantial amount more money. And we were able to get it down to 4, and we feel good about the 4. Next year, we're actually going to go out and bid and really vet everyone who honors the bid and see if we want to change insurance companies. But for now, that's a very good insurance bid for us. And we felt very good about Golden West Insurance Brokerage and what they did to help us, and I think that will continue. Dental insurance, they recommended that we changed our dental to Dentist Direct. It will actually reduce the premium by 11%. Employees pay the majority of dental. And so this will go right into employees' pockets, and they'll be delighted to pay less. There were a few dentists that weren't on the list to begin with. Golden West went out and locked up the dentists that all our people, so every one of our people's dentists is now on this plan, so there'll be no disruption to anyone as they go forward. Retirement is such an interesting thing. There was no rate increase to general employees, police, a minor increase. But lest you forget, we're still paying almost 49% of a police officer's salary to retirement. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. I've always said maybe we should pull out of retirement, pay them 20% into a 401k, and give them a raise. They'd probably be happy if we did that. I don't know that legally we can do that, but I'd love to do that. Fire had a brief, small little increase. We have an agreement with Fire that we pay up to 21%, and then they cover the rest. They have an agreement with home insurance, and the home insurance companies pay into Fire's retirement. We wish we could get auto insurance to do the same for police, but we're having a hard time getting the legislature to see that that's a prudent move. And that would lower the percentage we're paying to the police if we could get the same deal with them. Someday, I don't know, maybe we'll have to start charging for police to go to accidents to insurance companies, and maybe they'll come to the table and negotiate to get their attention that we think that's a reasonable thing for them to pay into. If you think about it, most accidents, we have at least 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 police officers who spend at least on average 2 hours there at a site. Well, that's a lot of money that the citizens are paying for them to be there for an accident. You can tell the world the proposed budget will be available online tomorrow at 10 a.m. And that's the, and also this presentation will be there for what it's worth without the mayor and I talking, so it probably will be better. I have to tell you, you have an amazing staff. We really enjoy working with them. I don't think there's any people I have more profound respect for than them, and it's a pleasure to work with them. They're hardworking. They're a little bit demanding of us, but I think you want them to be. And we want to thank them for what we're about to embark on. So we're going to spend a lot of time together in the next little while. But we also thank you. I've sat in your chair. I know how hard it is. I'm looking at Angela thinking you have no idea what's coming. But I remember how difficult it was to try and absorb. And I was a finance guy. And government accounting is different than anything I'd ever seen. And it was difficult to come in and try and absorb that. I got to where I've got to, do I trust the staff? Because sometimes that's something you have to do because you can't totally understand a $200 million budget. So we appreciate you. We appreciate the sacrifices you're going to make in the next few weeks so that we can go through this budget, hopefully understand it, and get to something that we can pass that's balanced. And then we can roll up our sleeves and start working on next year's budget. As the mayor said, we have a lot of staff that was involved in this. We put a lot of hours into this. We take what we propose to you very seriously. We put hours into debating and prioritizing and trying to make sure. The budgets I brought in 2005 and 2006 and 2007 weren't. They were really the result of one individual who kind of dictated what the budget would be. We're very proud of the collaboration that happens amongst our senior people and the involvement in the budget and the way they work together, the way they give and take. It's a wonderful thing to watch and to be part of, and we thank all of them because they are all marvelous. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for allowing us to present to you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, well, we'll just look for a motion to accept for review the proposed budget.
I'll make that motion that we accept for review the fiscal year 18-19 budget.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Nadolski, seconded by Councilmember White, to accept for review the 2018-2019 budget. This is a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay. We'll look for that in the 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's great.
Not 9:59, not 10:01, 10.
Okay. All right. Next item on our agenda is public comments. This is an opportunity for anyone to speak about anything that concerns them. Please give us your name and limit your comment to 3 minutes, please.
Francisco Robles. I'm here because I have some concerns. Sorry, I'm real nervous. I've never done this before.
Oh, you don't need to be.
At my address, there's been some accidents lately as of, the past couple of years. I lived there about 10 years now, and the last 4 years, there's been multiple accidents cars running stop signs and speeding through the intersections, and they've ended up inside my property 4 times already. They've taken down my fence 4 times, and I live in a corner lot, so my kids are my concerns to me. The last one was just this past weekend, and I want to see, what can the city do to change the intersection there, or address the intersection there, because the past accident, there's nothing that's been done before, so I'm just worried about my kids. I don't have a backyard, so.
What's his address?
Yeah, where do you live?
I live on the corner of 32nd and Jefferson. Just up the street, that's the hill by T.O. Smith Elementary, so everybody speeds down the hill or up the hill.
Okay.
And then at that stop sign, everybody just kind of, I don't know, it's quite a wide intersection, so everybody just doesn't pay attention or does a rolling stop or whatever, so.
We'll make sure that the administration, they're sitting right over there, they are hearing you, and maybe you want to address his concern?
You bet. First, I want to thank you for waiting 2.5 hours to get to public comment. That was a lot of minutia for you to get here, and that means a lot to us. We will certainly look into that. We'll have a traffic engineer in our police department look into that tomorrow. And then if you could wait, and when we're done, we can get your contact information. We'll have somebody get in touch with you and really get a deeper understanding of what's going on there. Your family's our first priority, and we're very happy to look into it.
I didn't know where else to go, like I said, so I asked the police officer that took the report, what should I do? Where to go? Because I asked before and nobody's really directed me anywhere.
You came to the right place. Yeah,
you can wait till this ends. It'll probably be not much longer. We'll get your contact information and follow up with that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Can you just tell me your exact address?
584 32nd Street.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Francisco. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Oh, and on top of it, out of those four accidents that taken down my fence, this will be the second time that I have to replace it out of pocket because they canceled the insurance or the insurance is not valid anymore. So, yeah.
Sorry to hear about that. Anyone else wish to address the council? Okay, well, Mayor, you want any more comments?
Just one thing, I would love to take the opportunity to thank everybody that came out for Make a Difference Day. 1,000 volunteers that did a lot of heavy lifting around the community. I think that's part of the reason we get continually recognized as the second most charitable city in the United States, because people do come out and help. And so that was great, and the city's not looked better in a long time, so we appreciate their efforts.
Thanks, Mayor. Council members, any comments?
Chair Heyer?
Yes, Councilmember Lopez.
My first comment, please don't assign me to read these notes in the future from this meeting. And,
Oh, yeah.
and my second comment is, if you could please, for the record, make a note that I would like to recommend that at some point in your leadership meetings, you talk about the possibility to allow some residents to maybe speak at the beginning of our meetings so that this doesn't have to happen, especially when we know we don't have a lot of people that are here to speak. I get it that if sometimes we have a number of people that might be inappropriate to do at the beginning, but like in a case like this, and this has always been in my mind, but tonight was the perfect timing for me to bring this up. And I don't know how you address it, but I just like to put that out on the radar for you.
You know, since you brought it up, we have had several discussions about this and thought that perhaps we could have a definite period of time at the beginning of a meeting, you know, say 10 minutes for public comment. And if it got longer than that, it would go to the end of the meeting.
There you go.
But most of the times, it would probably take care of it.
It will probably take care of it.
And if you don't mind.
Go ahead, please.
The timing of the recommendation is perfect because we've got a committee meeting going through all of our rules and norms.
Rules and norms.
When we're almost done.
Oh, okay.
The order of the items is built into our rules and norms, and so the timing's good.
All right.
Thanks for bringing that
And
up.
it's on our radar, so we're glad you're
Thank you. Thank
back
you.
into.
Any other comments, council members?
I have one quick one.
Yes, please.
So I want to, a girl from Nebraska bleeds red. And when I first got out here, I didn't understand why more people didn't wear purple. And I is meeting President White, and through his efforts, it has been fun to see the change in our community. Although I don't have as many Weber State items as I do Nebraska items, I have quite a few. And so I just, I'm glad that we were able to recognize him tonight, because I think he did a lot for our community.
Yeah. I got my purple tie.
You have your purple tie?
Yeah.
I will go ahead and add to that. When President White was first hired, I guess would be the word, I don't know, I was the council chair, and so he called, and we went up and met with him. And when we left that meeting, he had two goals in mind. The two things that we discussed were, number one, getting our residents, more of our residents, and especially more of our underprivileged residents, onto his campus and into Weber State. And on the flip side of that was getting more of his students and to, in his words, to experience Ogden City, more of his students to visit our downtown and to eat at our restaurants and to get out and actually experience our city. And I think those are the things that he should be remembered for. He's, like I said, I live near Weber State, and they are constantly adding and building new buildings and making new things and new majors and new programs of study up there at Weber State. But and today we all said how bad we were going to miss him, and we will miss him and his wife Victoria. But through his hard work and his dedication, not only to Weber State but to our community, we have numerous opportunities to always remember him. And there's a lot of students or a lot of residents now that will remember him because of the opportunities that they had to attend Weber State, and that was because of him and a lot of the hard work that he did. So I can honestly say, when I first got put on the council, I think it might have been 4 years. I don't know if it was 4 years or not. 2 to 4 years. I don't think anybody wore purple at any of the council meetings, and if they did, it was by accident. And it's neat tonight to see everyone in purple and the partnerships that we've formed with Weber State, and those will have, and they have had significant benefits, and they'll have lasting benefits, not only to Weber State, but to our community. So I thought the mayor spoke very eloquently and thanked him very well, and I piggyback on what the mayor has said and also what Councilmember White has said, that we are grateful for President White and his contributions.
I echo that, what Bart has mentioned. I think his main purpose is to have an open door policy. Any student could come in and talk to him, and when I was going up to Weber State, that atmosphere was not there.
Well, Weber State Academy then, though, wasn't it?
Right.
State College.
And we went up there.
Was it its current location?
Yeah.
Sorry, Doug.
Sorry. Maybe we ought to end this. Anyway, I was at the Martin Luther King celebration, and President White was there, and we had the opportunity to march from the Marshall White Center up to the amphitheater, and he was there. I think he has the attitude of, I want to provide the opportunities for both students, staff, and community, and I think that's what he is. The thing that I think will benefit Weber State is that he's developed the Dream 125 campaign, and that's going to really lift the opportunities there at the university. I read in the Standard, they asked him some questions, and they says, President White, what? And he says, don't call me that, call me Chuck. So they did that. So they, Chuck, what would your advice be to the new president? And he says, if it's not broken, don't fix it. His attitude is that you build upon the things that are there, and I think that's his main focus. As we read in the resolution, he has a heightened focus for education. He has improved the quality of education at Weber State, and he's provided the leadership to the university that will benefit not only those who are there now, but the alumni who has gone on. And we will miss him, but we anticipate that the next president coming in will have the same focus that President White has, and then lift the university to a much higher level than what it is at the present time. And Marcia, we can give you more purple if you want and eliminate some of the red, but
I'm good.
but we'll do that. But I appreciate what President White has done for not only the community but for the university there.
Anyone else? I would say more, but you have all said it. Exactly. So I'm going to look for motion to adjourn.
Mayor?
Oh, did you want to say some more?
Oh, no, he looked over, sorry.
Oh.
Thought he did.
Sorry, what was that?
Did you have more?
I thought you had a glance over here real quick, but nope.
Nope, good to go.
Just keep on your toes over there, Mayor.
I will second the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Lopez, seconded by everybody else. You could put Councilmember Blair down as the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's a wrap.